put it online for you if you want. If you aren't sure about making circle graphs where you're, like for this one up here, you're given the percentages. We just made up this data here, but you're given the percentages. And then if you have either computer software or you have these percent circles, it's pretty easy to just spread it out so that it works nicely, right? The percent you just count off on the side. If you don't have the percentages given to you and you just have numbers, okay, let's say we just have numbers here. Let's say that we had 4 categories again, just we'll call them A, B, C, and D. I know it's not very exciting categories, but let's say we had 10 here and 15 here and what do we have? Oops, that's no good. 6 here, and what does that leave me for? I don't know. 9 there, something like that. Okay? Let's say you have that. So this is the number. This is not the percent now, right? This is the number of people, let's say, that like these 4 different things, or the number of people that answered on a multiple choice question or something like that. Okay? What we need is the percent, though, right? We need the percent. If you want the percent and all you have is the actual numbers, we got to know how to calculate the percent. Now, this is where I made the assumption that I was assuming you had learned this in the past, but maybe you forgot. So let's look at it right now. If you want to calculate the percent, there's several ways you can do it. You could write it as a fraction. What is a percent? A percent is what? What does that mean? Something out of 100. Percent just means per 100. If you can easily write it as a fraction out of 100, that's a percent. These, we don't even know what they're out of yet. What do we need to figure out before we can even try and calculate a percent out of 100? What do you need to know?
How many people there are in total?
Yeah, you need to know this. Now, I constructed this so that the number wasn't that ugly of a number. I hope, as long as I thought about it carefully. I think that adds up to 40. All right? This is the total. The total number is 40. So what you could do for yourself first is write it as a fraction. You could say this is 10 out of 40. This is 15 out of 40. This is 6 out of 40. And this is 9 out of 40. So if you've got each of them as a fraction, I better move this or I'm going to run into my percent circle there. This is another thing that I love about this. I don't like to go on about why I love this tablet so much, but I'm not always very good at organizing my page, and this lets me fix it. So, anyways, again, I digress. If you want to figure it out as a percentage, probably there's different ways. You could just, if you can see what percentages it is in your head, by all means, write it down. If you can see that 10 out of 40 is like 1 out of 4, right? And 1 out of 4 is like, either you could think of it as how many out of 100 it would be or what percentage it would be. If you can see what it is right away, that's great. But if you can't, you can always use a calculator. I'm fine if you use a calculator for these things. There'll be a few things we do in the year where I don't want you to use a calculator, but there's my virtual calculator. I don't know if I've shown you that before, but if you want to know what 10 out of 40 is as a percentage, I just need to divide 10 divided by 40. It's going to give it to me as a decimal. Okay, it's 0.25. So I should actually add another column here, and I should say this is as a decimal and this is as a percent. This is 0.25. If something is 0.25, it means it's 25 out of 100, so it's 25%. 15 out of 40. Let's go back to the virtual calculator here. 15 divided by 40. It gives me that as a decimal. Now that's not 375 out of 100. What you look at is the first couple decimal places here, because those are the hundredths. The first couple decimal places are the hundredths, the tenths and the hundredths, right? It's 37.5 out of 100. It's this is 0.375, or what you should be looking at are the first couple spots here. This is 37.5%. Or if you were doing it on here, you could do 37.5 little marks. You could round it off to 38 if you want. That's how you find percentages. You can divide them. You can play around with the fractions yourself if you want. Like if you have 6 out of 40, you could say, I know that 6 out of 40 is like 3 out of 20. And 3 out of 20 is like 15 out of 100. So it's 15%. If you can do that, that's fine. But if you can't, there's no problem. You just divide it. All right? All right. So we're not going to be afraid of making circle graphs now, even if we're not given the percentages, right? You got to say something, right? Right? Okay.